meeting you right where you are on your foster care journey. This is the Forgotten Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Forgotten Podcast. I'm your host, Jamey Kaeb, and I am so happy to be with you. If you are part of the foster care community, passionate about serving, or simply interested in learning more, we are here for you. In every episode of this podcast, you're going to hear from men and women who've experienced foster care to one degree or another. They may have grown up in the system, are caseworkers or foster parents, or other people who are here to bring you hope and encouragement. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe and share with a friend. Remember, you are not alone. I hope you enjoy the Forgotten Podcast. Well, Jamey and Sarah, it is an absolute joy to talk with you today and to have you on the show. You are two of my very favorite people, so I'm really excited for our listeners to meet with you too. To start us off, I want to go way, way back. Okay, how did the two of you meet and how did you fall in love?
Okay, so we both went to college together. I was a year older than him in school. We're only 2 months apart, but I was old for my grade and he was young for his. So we met through Campus Crusade for Christ. We had some mutual friends, and we kind of, the first year we knew each other, we kind of brushed shoulders and were more acquaintances. And then we had a group of friends and we went together on a camping trip, and that really solidified our friendship. And then I transferred schools, but Jamey was going to school in my hometown, so I would come back to visit my parents and visit my friends and maintained connection with him. And so we were friends for 3 years before the veil was lifted. And I finally realized that the one I had been waiting for was right in front of me this whole time, and I just hadn't seen it. So he was gearing up to go to England to study abroad, and I was kind of starting to feel like there might be something here, but I don't want to wreck a friendship. So I was really praying about that, and I had a friend say, have you ever thought about Jamey? I just see it for some reason now. And I was like, yeah, actually I have, but don't tell anybody. So I knew he was leaving for England, and I wasn't going to say anything. And we had met for our last time with other friends, and I thought, okay, that's it. And then we're in Eau Claire area, and like 3 hours south is where I was going to school. And he had to go through Madison, where I was going to school, to get to Chicago for his sister's wedding and then to fly out. And so I got a phone call saying, hey, I'm coming through Madison. You want to meet at the mall? And I can say goodbye to you before I leave. And so we did, and his dad got lost, went to the golf shop, and Jamey declared his feelings.
Was that an intentional getting lost?
Yes, or they had talked beforehand. So
you always have to have a wingman. And that was the case there. So.
Right. So then we started dating at the mall, and he left for England.
Wow.
Probably the best thing that happened to me was me leaving for England for 4 months, where we could then all of a sudden, like, Sarah could get over the shock of it and then kind of get it in her system of, okay, I actually said yes. What does that mean? And I'll take it a little different. My shorter version is just Sarah was, again, college guy. Sarah was on my list, and so it was one of those things where it was always a friendship, yeah, but if this would go into something else, I'm all for that. So it just took her a little bit longer to maybe come around to the realization of, really, Lord, really, you want that that much sacrifice for me to go with that guy? So but yeah, it was friendship for a long time before it was kind of moving into that stage. But I think it was also something where we had a lot of through that friendship, we had a lot of similar passions. And so it was, what we're going to do with our lives. We both had teaching kind of in our blood and wanted to do teaching things. We both had faith as a big piece of it. And part of that faith too, that was something that really sparked my interest was I had wanted to adopt and to help children in the foster world and those kind of places and children and the marginalized. And she was in that world too. She had kind of talked about that too. So that was a piece of the puzzle that really kind of sparked my interest going forward and saying, okay, here's someone special. So
Yeah, I was curious about that. If adoption was something, that was kind of in both of you. How do you think that? I mean, was there a reason? Like, what was? How did adoption kind of become part of your individual hearts?
I just remember, even as a teen, having a heart for it. Just thinking one day maybe I would go to an orphanage and work in an orphanage. And I was looking into AmeriCorps. And at early college, I read a book about Amy Carmichael and how she
Yeah.
was in India and working at an orphanage. And I was just like, that might be me one day. I had two cousins that were adopted too, and I just thought that was the most amazing thing. And so it kind of entered in my world young. And I just knew someday it would be a part of what I did.
Okay. What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, it's funny because kind of going back to our story, I remember Sarah saying that we were around a campfire with a group of our friends on a trip that we go on every summer, and she was saying, I read about Amy Carmichael, and I think maybe I'm supposed to be just single and a missionary, and that's what I'm supposed to do. And in my mind, I was like, honey, if I have anything to do with it, you will not be single for the rest of your life. So that was one of those places where it's like, okay, we'll let you think that. But yeah, for me, it was kind of that thing where we had family friends who were my youth leaders growing up, and they were a foster family, and so they would bring to church every so often. Not just their own kids, but also other children, and learning and watching them how they did it as kind of a trying to bless children in hard places. And this is where as we live our lives, they can have a safe place, and they can hear the gospel, and they can hear who Jesus is, and maybe they're there for a few weeks, maybe they're for months, but we are going to be that kind of place for them. And so that was something that I took in, and watching, from the outside, seeing that and seeing how cool and just unique how that was. That was a place for me. And then yeah, I think there was just other outreaches as I started to see, from as a former educator and being in places and seeing more and more of the need, saying, okay, there's this need. And again, I guess it kind of goes to our Christian faith, where sometimes we'll say, hey, these are things that need to happen, but am I willing to actually step out and do it? And so that kind of had to wrestle with that of, okay, as I grew up, like, okay, it's not just saying, oh, that's important, but what am I going to do about it? And I remember in college, I had a mentor, and at that time it was through InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, and we were reading through James, and one of Sarah and my kind of life verses that's come out of that is James 1:27, and talking about pure religion is caring for the orphan and the widow, and keeping yourself from being polluted from the world. And he just kind of made a comment of that when I was in college of, yeah, I think more people would really take notice of Christians if they really follow that through. And I just kind of stopped him and said, really? Like, what do you mean by that? It's like, I just think if we would step up and take more of an interest and take steps towards that, it would be more people would be affected by the Christian faith than maybe other things we're doing nowadays. And so that was another kind of, I think, pivotal point of like, okay, that aligns with things that I've been feeling and thinking, and yep, this needs to be kind of a part of who I am and what I do. Not sure when or how, but at some point that needs to be a piece of that puzzle.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So when did you talk about adoption? Even, I mean, obviously it was even before you were dating or anything, right? You mentioned that. So then how did that conversation kind of continue?
Well, when we started dating, we knew pretty early, like, we're on the road to marriage here. And so I think we talked about it. I don't feel like we had memorable conversations, but I do remember when we first got married, we started praying right away and actually researching international adoption, and we were looking into all these different countries and what was available and praying through that. And then we just really felt like it wasn't the time yet to adopt. And then we had our first biological daughter, and then we would start praying, and we were trying to decide if we should adopt our second child, and we again felt like it just wasn't the time. And we were really like researching, and Lord, we will do this if you want. But he made it clear it's not the time yet. And so actually, while I was pregnant with my second daughter, I had been feeling, I think the next one is going to be adopted. And I didn't say anything to Jamey. And then we were in the kitchen one day and he said, I just really feel like the next one is supposed to be adopted. And I said, yeah, me too. So at that time, we had really been looking into Ethiopia. And there was a community of adopted kids from Ethiopia where we lived. And we liked that. And everything was lining up. We had researched a lot of different countries, but that one was starting to really stand out. And so Ethiopia at the time, your youngest child had to be 1 before you could apply. So we basically waited until she was 1, and then we sent in our paperwork, and then went through. At that time, we were told 9 to 12 month process. It was going pretty quick, but it ended up being about 22 months that we waited to bring our son Lincoln home. And during that time, we had felt like maybe we had been praying for 2, and we had told Ethiopia we were open to 2. And so when we got our referral for Lincoln, we were a little confused, I really thought it was going to be 2.
Yeah.
But we said yes to him. And then the following week, I actually found out I was pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
And we hadn't been trying. So there was 2, but it was just different than what we thought. So,
wow.
And then Lincoln came home in April of 2012, and then our son Jude was born in June of 2012.
Wow. That had to be an experience.
It was. Yeah. For a little while, I had 3 in diapers. So
Wow.
it was intense.
Well, and I'll kind of fill in. I'll be the color commentator a little bit, because to Sarah's story, which was all accurate. One of the things for us was, as we were in the process or thinking about adoption, a lot of times there's this talk, and even foster care too, is it's this dragger mentality a little bit. And I will definitely say I was the draggy. Sarah was dragging me along, I think, and I was all for it in my head, or I should say maybe in my heart I was all for it, but in my head I was saying and looking at all the things, from financial, from okay, what does it do to our family, all those kind of things. I think that was my place where I was like, I don't know. And I remember, again, a lot of good things happened in the kitchen, and in the kitchen we were sitting there and our computer was there, and I remember Sarah wanted to go to the Christian Alliance for Orphans Summit, and it was in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis that year, and which is not too far from us. And it was going to be $300, and I remember being like, "We don't have 300. I don't want, and $300 we could use for so many. I don't want to do that." Yeah. And she just said, "Well, that's too bad, because I just booked it, and we're gonna have to figure out where we're getting that." So it was all of a sudden, and it was one of those things where you need that sometimes to be able to say, and it broke my heart. It changed my world. That that experience, and open us up and say, okay, yep, this is the right thing to do. We need to be doing this. This is something. So there are those barriers, I think, that are going to come up, and sometimes it's one, and sometimes it's the other, and we both have found it in a relationship. But it is something where that was one of those things where you kind of I had to work through, and we had to kind of continually throughout our story find ways to, okay, trust in God, follow with that. And then kind of to back where she was talking there with 2 coming along, 1 biological, 1 adopted. We really had to trust God and say, okay, we have, I think at one time, Sarah, we were 4 kids under 5 years and under. And so that really kind of like, okay, how are we going to do it? So, it brought a lot of fun, but very, what you don't know is ahead of you is probably the best thing in some cases.
That's true. How old is everybody now?
So our oldest Grace is 13. Almost 14. Then our daughter Sienna is 11, Lincoln is 9, and Jude is 8.
Okay. Yeah. Kind of the golden years, I feel like, in the grade school, junior high, early junior high. That's fun. Okay. One thing I do have to ask, because I just feel like someone might be wondering, when you said a couple times we just didn't feel like it was the right time, what made you what was that you sensed that it wasn't quite the right time?
I think it was just we had been praying a lot about it, and it was, I really actually wanted to go through, Lord, we're willing to do this. But there was a pause in my spirit, it's just, it's not the right time. I just had a feeling within after lots of prayer and research and even begging, we want to do something. Because from early on, it was, those feelings from being younger, I want to do something about this problem, and my heart is broken over it. It's so vast. What can I do? I want to do this, and I just felt within, like, God is saying no. And then Jamey felt that too, and so the fact that we were unified in that just made it clear.
Yeah.
And I think that there was times, we had adoption basically binders or folders that we had, Sarah had put together shortly after our first child was born, and thinking, okay, maybe it's the time, and then just not feeling like that was the case. And then okay, and then after our second child, okay, let's get that binder back out, and that's kind of what happened. And then even now we're currently in the foster to adopt program, or the children's special needs program here in Wisconsin, and kind of same thing. There was time where I thought it was going to be, after our last child, who's now 8, would be 2 years, then we'll get back in, and it wasn't the right time. And so then it was 4 years, and it's been 8 years. But it was where about 2 years ago we finally, I think, felt that again, that spirit led, and just feeling like, yep, now's the time, let's take that step. And so we've been in that for about year and a half, 2 years now, and we're walking through that. But it was, again, just trying to not do it on our own will, but okay, and again, our motives and motivations of, okay, this is what we're doing. We need to follow through, saying yes or no, both ways.
Yeah. The waiting phase is a challenge. It's a weird phase, isn't it? Especially when you're so ready and you're like, God, you say this is a good thing. I remember that in our own journey. I would be like, you say this is a good thing. I'm willing. Like, let's do this. And yet that waiting phase, I learned so much about God, and, it's preparation for something, maybe not even for the child. So, so you guys know that in May, we're celebrating Foster Care Awareness Month. And at TFI, we just celebrated 10 years of ministry last month. Isn't that crazy? It's amazing.
That's awesome.
It's been just a time to reflect for me personally, and to celebrate what God has done. But we got to get back going, right? It's good to reflect. It's good to step back and look, but we got to move, because just like you've been saying, we got to do something. And so we are now just imagining, like, what does God have in store for the foster care community for the next 10 years? And so this is something we're asking people a lot this month. So I want to ask, first of all, what for you guys did you imagine when you thought about adoption for your family?
You're talking early on?
Early on, yeah.
Well, from going from thinking one day I want to work in an orphanage and I want to help when we found out about Ethiopia, when we were researching, it's like just in Ethiopia, there are 5 million orphans. That is such a big problem. And, we had heard some stats about foster care in the United States, and how there was all these kids that in foster care and available for adoption. And we had researched other countries, and we're hearing some numbers at that point. And it was like, wow, this is so big. And we want to adopt, but we also want to inspire other people to adopt. And we want to inspire other people to do something about this. So we have said from early on, we just want to remain open as a family to anyone that God would bring to us. So we don't have a cap at this point. It's just kind of one kid at a time. And we've been in process for the past 2.5 years through this program that we're in now. And we have the 4 kiddos that God has given us, but we are open to whatever kids he's going to bring us in the next however many years.
Yeah. Anything to add there, Jamey?
Yeah, I think, early on for me, one of the things that, for us was just that, where's the need and what can we help with? And we wrestled with, do we go through foster care? Do we do international? But what do we do? And it was kind of that thing where we, again, really something that from a long time ago is pick a path and walk forward. until God stops it or changes it. And I
Mm.
think that was kind of our view where we started. We went to a lot of different meetings and different things, and we just kind of started on that path. And then God opened another door, and He opened another door. And one of the things I would say, especially for people who are interested in foster care or adoption, a lot of times it's, well, how do I get started? And it's a lot of times it's not going to be maybe set in your lap. It's go do one thing, and then that will
Mm-hmm.
lead you to another thing, and then another thing. And so that's one thing that I think in our life we've really kind of, when we start to feel like this is where God's leading us, it's okay, we've picked this path, let's take another step. And then a door will open or it will close, and that will be the sense, okay, that's not going to be the way it is. And I think one of the things early on was I thought it was going to be just a easy, simple process. That's probably what I really thought. And with paperwork, with all those things, perseverance is important.
Mm.
And I think it's also something where we were on a path and it's like, okay, let's turn in this paperwork and then we'll see. And if that takes a little
Yeah.
bit longer time, that's okay. And if then go to the next step and just kept on kind of taking steps. And then all of a sudden we realized, okay, we're at that place. And I think sometimes we can look to the very end of what the final outcome will be. And it's important to just look at, okay, what's the next step I have to take?
Yeah.
And that was something that really, I think, reflection now, but at the beginning I really thought, oh, this is going to be a simple process, and nothing
Mm-hmm.
nothing in life is usually that simple. So
No.
and as important as this really is, I mean, bringing
Mm-hmm.
and protecting and helping other human beings, trying to bring family to people, that's a hard
Yeah.
thing. I mean,
Yeah.
biological or adopted or foster, that's a hard thing, but it's so worth it. It's so important.
Yeah. Well, and was it before or after you brought your son home, you actually got involved in some adoption ministry?
Mhm.
Was that before?
It was. So
Okay,
while
so tell
we
us
were in
about that. Yeah.
process,
Mm-hmm.
yep. So, we had been learning about the vastness of the problem, and we're like, okay, we want to adopt, but what else?
Yeah.
What else can we do about this? We were broken over it, like crying, and this is awful, and there has to be more that we can do as believers. So that's when we learned about the Christian Alliance for Orphans Summit, and that year it happened to just be coming right near us, like an hour and a half
Mm.
away, which they switch locations every year. So that
Yeah.
was pretty cool. I don't think it's been back to Minneapolis since.
Huh. Interesting.
So we went to that summit and we were like, wow, this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is amazing. We were all on fire. Let's go back and take what we learned here back to our community. And then I think we went every year, didn't we, for a few years in a row?
Yeah, we were
And
regulars.
yeah, we got to be regulars, and we just kind of slowly were trying to figure out how to get a grassroots movement going in our church.
Mm-hmm.
So this was in the midst of when we were in the process to adopt, and even after our son came home.
Okay.
We had started a group called Impact 127, and the 127 was based off of James 127
Mm-hmm.
verse that Jamey had mentioned. And so we would do Orphan Sunday events. We would do like a workshop. We started a Bible study using an orphan care related book and curriculum. So we were just plugging along, trying to do what we could for probably a little over 5 years, until we got
Wow.
to a point where we just felt like we were spinning our wheels.
Mm.
And we weren't sure how to move forward. We didn't have coaching. We were doing this all just going to summits, reading the
Mm.
books, staying connected with people online, and just trying to figure out what's the next thing that we can do to help
Yeah.
other people learn more about this. And then we finally went to a summit. When was it, Jamey? I can't even remember, like 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah,
And that's where we had known about the Forgotten Initiative while we were doing
Mm-hmm.
Impact 127. Someone had mentioned it and said, wow, this is really a cool ministry. But we're like, oh, yeah, that's cool for someone else to do because we're busy with Impact 127.
Sure.
So we had disbanded that group. And then probably in the fall, I think it was, and then the following spring went to the Orphan Summit. And then while we were there, we were just like, Lord, show us. I just really had a sense going into that summit, like God was going to show us our next step. So we went there, and then one of the breakout sessions, you spoke, Jamey, Kaeb, and we heard more about the Forgotten Initiative again, which we had already heard about in passing before. But after that breakout workshop, we got in line for lunch, and in line I was like, this is what we're supposed to do. I just know it. We have to bring this to Eau Claire and our community, and if we don't do it, no one else is going to do it. We're the ones. And Jamey was like, okay, let's do it. So shortly after that, we applied to become advocates.
That's awesome. Did we talk that summit at all?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
That was the first time I heard of you, Jamey, and it was that where, I mean, the other side of that is we went there, and part of this too is just where we were kind of spinning our wheels. And one of the things that we had heard from, and I don't remember who spoke of it, but it was something that too of is take look in your own community and see what's working well and what's the need there. And that was really, I think, impactful for us because we were looking and we were kind of in the adoption, oh, that's the way. And there wasn't really a what we kind of started looking at was there wasn't this place there where that was going, but what was happening in our area was we were hearing about the need for foster parents, for help in the foster community. And so that was something where we kind of stood back and said, okay, what's the need or what is already there that we could then work with versus kind of the starting out on our own and having to kind of fight through some of the the first initial obstacles that happen when you're trying to go someplace. So we were open and kind of had turned and saying, oh, there's foster care. That's something that there's a need. We're hearing it more and more in our community from different people, from different sources. And it's like, okay, that could be where we go. And then kind of to Sarah's story there, I came out of a breakout session. She came out of breakout session. We're standing in line for our Chick-fil-A, which we were definitely going to get that.
Yes.
And she was basically saying, this is what our community needs. There's no doubt in my mind. This is what I need. And then she looked at me and said, and we're going to do it. And so again, the mover and shaker that she is, it wasn't me saying, oh, it was more of a, okay, I'm not getting in your way. We're going to do this. Okay. So it was something where, again, I think led by the Holy Spirit and led to say, okay, yep, this is that place. And it's been amazing because we have gotten the support of TFI. We've learned from so many people, how best to kind of help and come alongside the foster care community, and so it's fit in our community. We've seen growth where things that we were kind of maybe closed doors before were opened, and even to the point where I think, again, the Lord was doing things in those 5 years beforehand for us, because even some of the churches that we've been involved with, the people we've talked to, they see and say, well, you were doing this before. And again, you're in it for the long haul. And that was something that was really interesting, is because we had been doing this for a long time, it wasn't just a passionate excitement. It was really understanding that, oh, wow, you guys mean this, and you're going to be here 10 years from now. You're going to be here and keep on doing this. It's not kind of the trend that's kind of the social justice trend right now. This is something that you really are seeing. And so we want to walk alongside with you because you've been in it. So I say that because sometimes I think there are people who are in the trenches and it feels like we're in the trenches. And God can use those things in a lot of different ways, but I think that's one of those things where when you're in those trenches, there's experience, there's understanding that you will learn, and that you may not see it right now, but in 5 years, you talk about, imagine 10 years, that is going to come back and be useful. It reminds me of the story of David. He had to go through killing the lion, killing the bear, because it led to his standoff with Goliath. Those kind of things led up to that. And I think that's stuff in smaller areas of our own lives. We're in no way a David and Goliath situation, but we've learned from things, and that's helped us to get us where we are. And I think that's something everybody can take in their own stories and see that.
Yeah. How do you feel like? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
Just that verse has come up over and over from Galatians. Do not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time you'll reap a harvest if you do not give up. And that's been something that has ministered to our hearts as we do ministry.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference between doing ministry for 5 years without TFI and then all of a sudden getting TFI, getting the support, the coaching, the resources, the connection to other advocates, all of that pouring into us has just been a game changer. And it's just like all the stuff that we had to worry about before, and we had no idea how we were going to do it, and we could get bogged down by it, administrative stuff. Now we don't have to worry about it as much, and so it's been huge. So we're so appreciative that we get to be advocates and get to be connected to this greater ministry.
Well, we are incredibly grateful to be on the journey with you. It is an absolute gift. For me personally, when I started this 10 years ago, I had no idea. I did have a sense, we talk about imagine that this was going to grow. But that's truly all I knew. I had no plan to grow it. I had no real vision, except I just believed because I saw the need in my community that certainly that meant there had to be need in other communities.
Right.
And you guys, just the more we get to know each other and the other advocates, and then our advocates get to know each other, I mean, it's like family, right? Like we have the same heart, like for this community, and it is just an absolute gift to walk it together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I brought up that question of what do you imagine? I want to kind of close out here with what do you guys imagine and hope for your foster care community where you live, and then even the bigger, broader?
Well, wouldn't it be awesome if every kid in our community was cared for and every kid that needed a forever home found one, and kids that didn't need a forever home, that were going back to their birth parents felt supported and not in it alone, and social workers felt like they were supported and they had a place, the church, especially to come to and say, this is what we need, can you help us? And they didn't feel the bog down of their day-to-day that can be so hard to deal with and depressing, but they felt like, wow, I'm not alone in this. There are people in our community that care. And then people that want to do something, they have a way to get connected, and they're not sitting and reading the stats or hearing a story and saying, I have no idea what to do. I guess there's not much for me to do because I don't see myself adopting, so I guess that there's not much I can do. But they could get connected and say, well, I'm really good at, design, so I can help with the Project Sunshine. Or I'm really good at making meals, so I can make a meal for that foster family, or whatever the case is, that we can help people get connected to helping the foster care community too. And that the foster care community in our area was just totally supported.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Jamie, what about you?
I think, I would say, and I'm saying this to myself as well as to everyone else, because it has to be something that again, talking that head knowledge and that heart knowledge. The thing that just always comes back to me is the statistic out there, and they talk about how there's in the United States there's about 140,000 children who are waiting for a home and could be put or taken out of foster care because there is that need for them to have a home. And then I also think of that there's 300,000 churches in America, and so I guess if we don't even need one family from every church to step up, to be able to help bring children into a forever home, bring children into a safe place, or like Sarah said, bring that biological family back together, that family to be able to get the wraparound help that they need to be able to have children and families stay together. And so I guess the part of me that I kind of go back to, and this is where that, again, James 1:27 comes in. It talks about pure religion and faultless religion, and is about caring for orphans and widows, but it also says not being polluted by the world. And that's something that I sometimes forget about. And the thing that I feel that for me, the polluted by the world can sometimes be this idea of the American dream, or it could be sometimes the perfect family, or it could be sometimes the we can't do it because I don't have $300 to go to this kind of seminar. And so I think it's that thing where, I look at it and I look at, we have a spare guest bedroom. I want to fill that with children. How many families have a spare guest bedroom that could fill that with children? Or how many families out there have had their kids go through? I want to, in 10 years, I want to have a second round of kids to come through. And maybe at that point, it's going to be all high school kids, all teenagers. Oh my gosh. We have one and that stuff. What if we had all 5 teenagers? So I think it's that question of what do I really think that if the church would step up and we would be walking through that, what's polluting us, and sometimes it's this mind block of, well, we can't do that, or this might cause this problem. We are stopping ourselves from watching God come in and take over and do amazing more than we could ever possibly imagine. And so I guess that would be my hope, is that let's imagine it and get the word out and get people to start kind of stepping up into that. And I'll just talk as a guy, other men to be stepping up to lead that initiative, to protect women, to come in, families, all of us to kind of to do those needed things, to take a step forward. And again, pick that path and take a step forward and keep on taking it, and don't stop because of fear or worry or what are other people going to think or whatever, but keep on taking those steps forward. So that's would be just an awesome thing to see that continue to grow and happen within the church.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And Sarah, I loved what you said, that you want to see every, you talked about the different people groups in my community, and that's what it takes, right? We're not trying to change the world, right? God has called us each to play a role, but through awareness, through advocacy, through giving those opportunities, communities can be changed. Families are changed. You guys have been changed. And now you're being a part of God working and changing other people. And then it just grows from there. And that is why we need more advocates, right? We need more people in communities all across the nation, because this isn't a one person can do it all. Right. This is a team. This is a army of people, army of advocates. And so for our listeners, if you have never really known about this advocate role, you can apply to become an advocate. And Jamey and Sarah said they have been helped, right, guys?
Totally have. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
We are truly here for you guys, and we want to help support you because we're on the same mission. We just want to see more people supported and more people experience Jesus. And it's crazy exciting to be part of it.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask one final question to you, because I am just thinking some of our listeners probably resonate very much to what you guys are saying, where you've been and you're still living it. You're in this waiting phase again, right? You want to do more because God has put this fire in you. You want to do more. And yet he has said, wait, and he's saying, wait. And not that you're not doing anything, because you're doing a lot, but there's more that you want to do. And so the waiting is still hard. So will you speak to others who are in the waiting season right now, and they're really struggling because perhaps for them we can be waiting over so many things, so I won't even give descriptors, but just speak to the one who's waiting.
I think, like you said, there's just a lot to be learned in the waiting. One thing that we can struggle with during this time is feeling like, what's wrong with our family? Why aren't we being selected? We've reached out about a lot of kids that we've seen on the website that are looking for a home, and it just hasn't worked out for them to come to our home. And we're like, what gives? Yeah. And then I can start thinking about all the ways that I fall short and how inadequate I am, and take it personally that we haven't gotten a placement, and have to refocus on the fact that, no, that's not the case. But God has work that he's doing in our hearts and in our family. And, over and over and over again in our lives, he's proved himself faithful. And when we get the hindsight, we say, oh, that's why. And so knowing that he is faithful, that he has put us on this path, and he has a child at the end of it. I truly believe that, or children. I don't know. We're open. But we are going to get that hindsight someday. And for now, we just need to keep on plugging along, keep on praying, and keep on doing the things that we can do. And there are things that we can do right now because we don't have another child that we may not have been able to do because we have another child. You know, I've been thinking of things with the Forgotten Initiative and initiatives and projects we're able to take on because we're not in that kangaroo phase of having a new child in our home. So just trusting that and helping our kids to trust that, because they can get discouraged during this too and say, we're never going to get a placement. And we've had to walk with them through that. And hopefully, and I have great hope that this is what will happen. They will look back one day and say, oh yeah, God was faithful in that moment. And that will increase their faith as well, because they got to walk through this with us. And we got to do it together as a family.
For sure.
Yeah, I think, I think it's okay. I hope people are hearing that it's okay to, have moments to be down, to feel like what's going on. And we feel that too. One of the things that we've had or been able to do kind of in that sense too is we have had, been able to have some kids come over for some respite and things like that. And so we still are trying to open and be open to, okay, if it's these little things, Lord, that's where it's supposed to be right now, then that's where it's supposed to be. And I think the other thing for me, because we have had moments where I had to paint the spare room and get the bunk beds up and get it ready because there's a chance we're going to get these children, and then it doesn't come through. And then another one, and okay, let's get this ready, and it doesn't come through. Those are moments where it is hard, it is very difficult, and so there's a loss even in that from our side. But I think it comes back to what I've had to remind myself, because I have to remember I'm not in control, even though I want to be, that it's one of those things where I have come back to that thought of, it's not about me. And, it's one of those things where it really is wanting to keep that heart of, are those kids okay? Are they safe? Are they being taken care of? And the best place that they can be, that's where we ultimately want to see them. If it's, back with their biological parents, if it's in a different place, whatever that is, that's what we really, our hope is. And so that might mean it's tough for me, but that's okay. It's really about what's best for them. And then I continue to pray and hope that that happens. And when it's the time for them to come into our world and God to bring that our way, let us be ready for that. And so it is trying to release that, okay, what do I have control over, and being like, okay, in your good time, and your will, not my will, is kind of where I have to continue to remind myself of that.
Yeah. Well, and that's a reminder for all of us, not my will, but his be done, right? But when we really can believe that and trust that and release that control back to him, because he had it all along, we're better for it. We feel better. We understand him better. And that's what, that's beautiful. So you guys, I love you both, and I thank you. Thank you for being on today and for sharing your story and what God's been teaching you. Well, I hope today's episode was an encouragement to you wherever you are on this foster care journey. Now, we want you to stay connected, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Also, we have a ton of great content for you over at theforgotteninitiative.org. Thank you for watching, and I can't wait to see you next time.